Hello, my dear unsettlers. Okay, all right. So, come closer. This is the story of the most haunted island in the world, the island of Poveglia. Hidden in the watery tangle of Venice's lagoon is an island people say you speak of only in whispers, Poveglia. They tell you to keep your voice low, as if saying the name too loud might stir whatever rests under its cracked tiles. Tonight, we cross the black water in imagination and step onto a place that remembers the weight of what was buried there. The boat nudges the shore like a fingertip. Up close, Poveglia is smaller than the stories, but smaller makes it worse. There is nowhere to run that does not cross the same earth where so many were laid down. The dock groans as if displeased. The island's first breath is the stink of old disinfectant braided with rot and reed, an antiseptic perfume preserved like a warning. You can taste the past before you step inside. When plague came, Venice learned to divide the world into the living and the expendable. Islands were chosen for one brutal efficiency: remove the sick, close the gate, save the city. Poveglia became a lazaretto, a quarantine island, a place where men and women were carried ashore with lanterns and lists, and then unmade into numbers. Picture those nights, pallbearers moving in the torchlight, shovels striking wet earth, hands that do the work until the routine becomes numb. There were no headstones for many. The ground took them as if it had always known how to hold a secret. Years later, the island learned a new language of cruelty. A clinic, then wards for those the city wanted out of sight, patients who were inconvenient, relatives who wished problems away. The hospital's corridors looped like questions. The rooms were small. The windows looked only onto water. Staff kept logs and performed rituals of care, while rumors stuttered into accusations. People started telling stories about a doctor who bent toward madness on that island, about experiments that looked less like treatment and more like punishment. Whether every tale is true is almost irrelevant. The stories stitched themselves into the buildings like ivy, and every passerby who waited in a doorway felt their cold. Poveglia's reputation didn't stay hidden. Curiosity is a tidal thing. Explorers went by day, trespassers by night. Bloggers posted ghosted audio. Urban legend boards fed on the images returned. Even television crews came, seeking proof. One well-known team, led by Zach Bagans and his crew, filmed there, carrying cameras into the corridors and bringing a rush of viewers who had never seen the lagoon with their own eyes. The episode became part of the island's modern myth, scattering clips and whispers that made believers bolder and skeptics angrier. The cameras caught what looks like fear, and fear, once filmed, rarely forgets to return. Listen to those who went at night. They speak of sudden cold, like a hand closing the air around them, of batteries that drain as if the island consumes power, of cameras that flicker and die. One woman says she heard a child's laugh low, close to the ground, bright and impossible there. Another claims their microphone, left running, caught a single breath between gusts of wind, too small to belong to any adult, too near to be only a memory. A group of trespassers told of a voice that threaded through a corridor, calling an old Venetian name like a key in a lock. They followed it and found nothing but a room lined with peeling paint and an old perfumed scent that stuck to their clothes. If you want to be frightened by Poveglia, don't look for monsters with teeth. Look for the ordinary cruelties. There are ledger pages that record arrivals and burials with the same flat hand, the same ink. A clerk notes how many came from a ship and where they were sent to be buried, and the handwriting turns a face into a figure, a life into a line. That is the island's more bitter haunt, the bureaucratic reduction of a human to a statistic. It is quieter and worse because it imagines erasure as necessary. Picture walking its halls at night with only a torch. The tile crunches under your shoes like brittle bone. Your light skims a rusted bed frame, slides over a window whose bars hold the sky like a cage. You hear a whisper that could be wind, and because you want a story to bind the place, your heart supplies the voice's name. You press record for proof. The battery dies. The next morning, the clip contains a single ragged sound that you swear you did not make. A syllable that could be a name, or could be the sea rearranging its breath. People who return from Poveglia speak of a fatigue that is not simple tiredness. It sits in the bones like damp concrete. It lingers, as if the island keeps an accounting of who has been there and takes a toll from your strength. Some say it is grief. Some say it is the air. Others refuse to speak of it at all, their silence more telling than any story.
There are small, awful consistencies. Visitors report again and again electronic interference in the same wings. Cameras feed static. Compasses spin without reason. Those who are inclined to supernatural readings say the place is hungry for energy. Those inclined to explanation point to the salt and old wiring and say physics, not phantoms. Both accounts make for good theater. Both keep the island in conversation. And there are moments that refuse tidy explanation. One group filmed through a doorway and later found their footage contained a figure in the distance. Only when they sped the video up did the silhouette flick into something that might be human, might be shadow. Another returned a recording with a noise like a child humming a lullaby, a tune too old to be a memory for most present. When the crew aired such clips, viewers debated whether editing had conjured the creep or whether the island had finally decided to offer proof. You can invent terror with a catalog of horrors, but the real fear at Poveglia is a patient human thing. It is the image of a nurse glancing away while names are tallied, the bureaucrat who files a list and then sleeps well. It is a place where decisions meant to protect turned into a method of concealment. Imagine being sent to that small island as a cautionary measure and never being the subject of a story again. Imagine becoming a margin note in a ledger. The island keeps those margins like claws. If you must be haunted, let it be by the small details. The way a rusted hinge squeals like a throat being cleared. The sudden breath you feel along your collar. The slow, persistent drip of water through a broken tile that sounds like someone counting. These are the textures of terrors that do not need to scream. They settle, then grow. Now imagine the last light on Poveglia, the boat pushing off, the island shrinking to a bruise on dark water. Behind you, the hull slaps the wake. Ahead, Venice glitters with music and laughter. You play back your footage and there it is, a thin sound, barely audible, like someone murmuring a name into wet cloth. You rewind and listen again. A name is different each time you say it aloud, but the feeling is the same. An insistence that this place remembers, that it will not let itself be forgotten. Poveglia's ghosts, if ghosts is the word you choose, are stubborn because they are made of ordinary things. Ledger entries, closed doors, an exhausted hand that lowered a shutter one last time. They are made of how people chose to deal with fear, and in that choosing left others in the dark. That makes it smell less like a haunted house and more like an old wound that will not scab. So if you go there in your head tonight, go with the sound of a child's hush in your ear,
with the taste of disinfectant and salt on your tongue, and with the knowledge that the scariest things are not the ones that leap from the dark, but the ones that waited politely for their turn in the daylight and were never called back. Remember, the island exhales the same single word every night: remember. Whether that is a plea, curse, or simple echo depends on whether you answer. If you want the footage, if you want the whispered name and the battery that died mid-sentence, you know where to find them. But some things are better to leave to the tide. If you liked this dive into Poveglia, subscribe for more stories that walk the line between history and horror, and tell me which creepy place you want to discover next. See you on the next episode. Bye.